Thank you, Troy. Now, please help me welcome Ernest Mast, President and Managing Director of Cygnus Metals Limited, for a fireside chat. So I saw a recent press release about the late 2024, I think, about the merger with Doré Copper. You want to tell the crowd a little bit about that and a little bit about Cygnus and what you guys are up to?
Yes, great to be here. We had two companies that started discussions, in fact, at this conference about a year ago. And one of the companies, Cygnus Metals, ASX-listed company, with exploration properties in Australia, as well as a portfolio of lithium properties in northern Quebec in the James Bay region. It's a part of a bigger group of companies, and it was decided that this would be the lithium vehicle for the corporation. With the downturn in the lithium market, the group started looking for assets in Canada, and they focused on copper gold to see if they can identify an asset for a corporate transaction. Doré Copper Mining Corp, TSX-V listed company with a copper gold project in the Chibougamau region of Quebec, about 5.5-hour drive from here, had completed some previous work, and we're looking for a transaction whereby control would not be lost of the asset, where the shareholders of the company would stay involved in the company, but would be a transformational transaction. And we decided that the merger with Cygnus was that type of transaction. It's played out to be true, whereby Doré Copper Mining had a market cap of approximately $15 million Canadian, tremendously undervalued, like many other Canadian peer companies. The transaction with Cygnus put our asset on the ASX, where we're the highest grade copper deposit on the ASX, one of the more advanced copper deposits. And there's quite an appetite amongst Australian investors for that type of vehicle. And we've seen a re-rate occur whereby the combined company has a market cap of approximately $60 million Canadian. And obviously that puts the company in a much better position. And then on top of it, the combination of the copper assets with the lithium assets really makes us truly a critical metals company. And so we think we're very well positioned by doing that merger. So it was a merger which really, or a transaction which worked for both sides. The board of the company is composed of 3 representatives from Cygnus and 3 representatives originally from Doré, but we're working as a cohesive unit moving the project forward.
Okay, what was the work Doré Copper had done on the project? So what was the work Doré had done before the acquisition?
So Doré was listed in early 2020, and the main focus of the company was first to build up the resource base. Our principal deposit was Corner Bay, or is Corner Bay, and during Doré's time, the Corner Bay deposit increased in size from 1.5 million tons to 8.6 million tons, always keeping the grade over 3% copper, making it one of the highest grade copper deposits in North America. And it's really just copper, gold, silver. There's no zinc associated with it, so it produces a very tight premium product. The other thing we did is, upon completing that resource, we went ahead and we did a PEA on the project, and we established a 10.5-year mine life, producing copper equivalent of 50 million pounds per year, all-in sustaining cost of $2.24 per pound, meaning at today's copper price, we would have a margin of about $100 million US per year. And obviously that's one of the reasons why we're frustrated with the previous market cap, and we're looking to do a transaction, and as I mentioned, the transaction whereby we would keep skin in the game. And so that was principle. The other thing that we had done was we also commenced the permitting process in the province of Quebec. The permitting process is that you send the province a notification of project, and then they respond with an evaluation of your project preliminary called a project directive. And that kind of spells out all the work you need to do for your ESIA. And our project directive was very straightforward because our project is actually a brownfield project. And that would allow us to give us the parameters we need to move forward with the ESIA study.
Okay. So the 2025 exploration program. So what work are you planning to do for the rest of the year?
During 2025, we started the project, or we started the company up after the merger with Cygnus, and have a new geology team, or many components of a new geology team, and that team has really looked deeply into the Chibougamau camp. Chibougamau camp had 17 past producing mines, and we had Doré Copper, we had scanned about 120,000 mine drawings, and we'd only really scratched the surface of what is the potential of the camp. And it's great having fresh eyes look at the project, especially from a geological point of view. And indeed, the new geology team have identified some extremely interesting targets. We have drilled some, and those results have been press released. So there's a couple of deposits about 3 to 4 kilometers from our mill, whereby there currently is not a resource on it, and we drilled from the ice, which was the first time we'd ever done that. And one of the intersections was really interesting because the deposit's called Goldeneye, previously called Doré Ramp, and there was some work done on it in the late 1980s, early 1990s, where about 92 drill holes were put into the property, and those drill holes were a combination of drill holes from an underground ramp, which was built, and drill holes from surface. And it was determined that the deposit at about 400 meters essentially was no longer there. Again, as a new group, we looked a little deeper into the situation, and we realized that the deeper drill holes that were done in the 90s actually probably didn't hit the structure, and therefore the structure should be still open. And so we did a drill hole about 360 meters deep, and we had an intercept of 7.4 meters, 0.9% copper and 4.6 grams per ton gold, and about 15 grams per ton silver. And so that was a great success. We had some other intersections into that deposit, which also were very promising, and we're still waiting on a couple of assays. So that was one of our major initiatives during 2025. Another major initiative is infill drilling at the Corner Bay deposit. As I mentioned, we had built up Corner Bay resources to 8.6 million tons, and about 2.9 million tons were indicated and 5.6 million tons were inferred. Following our PEA in 2022, we did some infill drilling, and then we commenced some infill drilling again last year and this year, and I fully expect that those numbers to become flipped, whereby we'd have the vast majority of the deposit is indicated resources as opposed to inferred resources. And as we build up the indicated resources, we can obviously then start talking about a feasibility study for the Corner Bay deposit. And also around the Corner Bay deposit, we've done a number of downhole EM surveys. And the Corner Bay deposit is essentially an intrusive vein structure. There's a number of veins in the area, and most of the exploration has been done on the principal vein where we do have those resources. And the downhole EM work that was done has identified other potential targets. And so for the remainder of the year, we have about 3 or 4 excellent EM targets to drill at the Corner Bay deposit. In addition, Doré Copper had a deposit, or has a resource on a deposit called Cedar Bay, which is just, in fact, very close to this Goldeneye that I mentioned previously. And the Cedar Bay deposit has a resource of 360,000 tons at about 1.82% copper and 8.6 grams per ton gold. So a very rich deposit.
Wow.
And that deposit sits under a past producing mine. We had drilled some drill holes in 2020, weren't as spectacular as the previous work we had done, and so we decided not to update the resource. But again, the importance of having fresh eyes look at a deposit. The team has identified that those drill holes that we did in 2020 that we weren't that thrilled about when you put it in a 2025 context with gold at $3,300 an ounce, suddenly becomes really interesting. And so we're going to do a couple of other holes at Cedar Bay and tie everything together and come up and look to come up with a resource there. And so those are some of the, and so the Cedar Bay deposit, the Corner Bay deposit, and we have some other deposits as well, which are interesting and exciting for us to work on this year.
Right. So just to take a little macro look at this, so it's a challenging environment for juniors. How is Cygnus navigating it, and what sets you apart from other juniors?
Our biggest advantage right now is, in fact, the ASX listing and the association we have with the Cygnus Group, where access to capital is not as challenging as it was when we were just Doré Copper. And that's really the main strategic advantage we have. However, we have some other advantages, and that is we're one of the more advanced development projects in North America. The previous panel talked about the support from the Quebec government to certain mining projects, and we're definitely in line for that. And so we have good government support, not only from Quebec, but also from Canada. We're one of the companies who were fortunate enough to receive Canadian Critical Metals Infrastructure Fund funding for our feasibility study. Another factor which I'd say sets us apart is the low capital intensity we have in our project. Typically, copper projects have capital intensity of $20,000 to $30,000 per ton. Our project, because of the high-grade nature, the existing infrastructure in place, our capital intensity is less than $8,000 a ton, making us one of the lowest capital intensity projects, copper projects, in the world. And that's another advantage that we have. Another great advantage is being in the province of Quebec and being in the Iwi-Ichi territory. We've established a very good relationship with the Cree Nation, and the Cree Nation are a very sophisticated First Nations group who welcome investment done right in their territory, and we don't see really any impediments on the permitting process due to dealings with the First Nations. And Quebec is set up, or the First Nations in Quebec are set up in a very structured way where there's no issues with territories. So you don't get really overlap of First Nations, which you do get in other jurisdictions around the world. And when that occurs, there's really a lot of confusion and it results in delays. And again, in Quebec, we have essentially a very clear path of how we're going to move the project forward from a permitting and from a social point of view. Yeah, so those are some of the things that set us apart from
Exciting.
From others.
So we just have about a couple of minutes left, 2 minutes. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to add, in terms of when we look at the copper supply around the world, there's a very interesting dynamic going on where we see copper consumption increasing 2 to 2.5% per year, as it has for the past 40 years. And the main catalyst over the last 40 years may have been China, may have been some areas in the developing world. We see that probably repeating now with maybe India and Indonesia and other populous nations. The current mines in operation around the world are quite old. And I was in fact at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and someone in the audience challenged the thesis that there is lots of copper supply. You just have to go to the massive porphyries that exist and you can expand them incrementally, indefinitely. But I brought up the point of the Chuquicamata mine in Chile, which, you know, for about 100 years was the largest copper source in the world, and they've now transitioned underground, and their production is about a quarter of what their production was previously. And the same thing's going to happen with the Escondida mine and the Pelambres mine and the Collahuasi mine and the Morenci mine and many other mines around the world. So we do need new mines to come in. The incentive price to build a new mine for most companies, the price needs to be north of $5 a pound. That's not the case for us because of our low capital intensity, our high grades, the stability of the Quebec jurisdiction, the low energy prices, availability of experienced mining labor. And so I think, again, we're very well positioned in a macro environment. We're not a big copper producer, producing about 20,000 tons per year of copper equivalent. However, we will be a very profitable producer when we get back into operation.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's about our time.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.